Hey everyone, real quick disclaimer before this review begins. All thoughts are my own and my original thoughts. I was sent these paddles for potential with a review, not necessarily with a review being guaranteed, more to try them out, share my thoughts, and share my opinions and feels on how they play and how they perform in today's current pickleball market. With that being said, I do want to emphasize that I will remain unbiased and share my own opinions and thoughts on the paddles and those alone. At times, I might compare my opinions maybe to those of other reviewers. Say if a video or a paddle has already been launched and it's a review after launch. But if it's a review before or of the day of launch of a paddle, those thoughts will be my own and my own alone. All right. Finally, I am not being paid to do this review. Typically, I will have either an affiliate's code, a discount code, or an affiliate's link, usually in the description of these videos or in the comments or in the bio somewhere on the video. Regardless, I will also try and share these in the beginning of each video. With that being said, I hope you enjoy this and enjoy the video. Doing a wide body paddle comparison. I've got right here a Gen 2 wide body, a Gen 3 wide body, and a Gen 4 wide body. And we're going to do a comparison of all three of these paddles. And we're going to see how they stack up against each other and against the overall paddle landscape and market as it stands currently. For reference, it is September 2025 at the time of recording this. I realized when we do a lot of these paddle review videos, breakdowns, comparisons, all of that, a lot of people don't always give the date. It says it sometimes in the videos and stuff like that, but wanted to give that verbal reference. Anyways, moving it along now. So let's talk Gen 2 wide bodies. So I have right here my trusty and handy Valera Mach 2 Forza. Great shape, probably the GOAT for all-time Valera paddles, in my opinion. I think this is the best paddle Valera's produced to date. I think this is one of the spinniest paddles to date in terms of grit, new out of the box. And then in terms of control, I think this thing is a control king. For those of you that aren't really aware of this paddle, I did review it about a year ago on the channel, but with this paddle, they originally did the Mach 2, which was the non-thermoformed one, and then they did Mach 2 Forza, which is the thermoformed one. They did it in 14 and 16 millimeter. This is the 16 millimeter. For context and kind of about the paddle, it's a control paddle, really, and I think that is a good thing. I do like control paddles. I don't have an issue with them, but in certain scenarios, that can be the downside of it, and I'll explain why. So in this gameplay footage that I'm going to show here, I'm playing, and it was pretty windy at times during this session. This is an outdoor fall session in New England, so the wind and weather can be a little unpredictable. But other than that, it was a really nice day, and I think I played maybe half a game with it. Prior to that, I warmed up with it a bit and did some drilling kind of at home with it before leaving. But you know when I was fighting the wind, that was the real issue here. That was the problem. Is I'd drive, and my drive would go into the top of the net, or it would go short, or it would barely get over the into the kitchen on the other side of the court. And I'm putting a lot of effort into the swing. Now, if you're someone that hits a big ball and you don't want a lot of power behind your paddle, this is a great paddle for you, because guess what? You're not going to miss. You're not going to miss many balls. And that's the beauty of this thing. I have mine weighted up. This is 1 gram lead tape, bottom corners, and a big strip up top. And it's just really to emphasize the strengths of the wide body, mainly the up top piece, and just adding even more kind of twist weight and stability on the bottom, even though, to be honest, this shape doesn't even need that. But yeah, I really wanted to try and get what I could out of it. I like it, but It's a tough paddle for me to use, especially in the conditions I was in. I've named this paddle in the past, so I have a lot of time on it. I do like the paddle, but I will say that I feel like mainly, especially when it comes to returning and serving, is the paddle's downside. I think at the kitchen line and at the kitchen, the paddle's great, but it comes to when to serving and returning and maybe put away balls and overheads, you're going to have a tough time if you don't have a lot of natural power already. I like to consider myself and think of myself as someone that has a good amount of natural power with a prior tennis background, but I was not the biggest hitter in tennis. I was more of an all around or tactical player and a doubles focused player rather than like some singles baseline slugger. So, yeah, I'll use that kind of description for context. But moving it along, that's kind of my thoughts on Gen 2. There really is not a lot of Gen 2 wide bodies. I was looking back through all the paddles I bought or reviewed or just done something with on the channel. And the Mach 2 Forza was really the only one that stuck out for me. All the other ones I just didn't really enjoy, to be honest, or they just didn't exist at the time in the right setting. Now, you could argue that the Paddletechs, it's a Gen 1, but I also think the Paddletechs are a much newer wide body than the original Gen 1 paddles. That's why I don't have a Gen 1 wide body in here at the moment. But moving it along, we have the Gen 3. This is the Pegasus Alpha Pro Power by 11624 wide body. And I just want to start this video with wow. I was shocked at how much I liked this paddle. Did not expect it whatsoever. For context, I was very close to maining the Alpha Pro Power Vapor, the blacked out version, the kind of beta tester version before they went with the official colorways and colors, as well as the finalized one. And when I did the review of the Alpha Pro Powers, I even said in the review, the Pegasus is good, but you probably should skip the Pegasus and just go to the Vapor. Having put a much more time on the Pegasus now, I would say that this is not a skip whatsoever. This is a great paddle. It's poppy, but it's a controlled poppy with the Alpha Pro Power edition of it. The Power edition of it is a little too poppy for me. I didn't love that, but this is like the perfect level of Gen 3 power to control for me personally. Also, I don't know what it is, but for some reason, this specific Alpha Pro Power out of the three that I have has the best handle. Like, this handle just feels so good. And I don't know why. It reminds me a lot of the GX2 Power handle. And I'll have to ask David if he did anything newer to the production Alpha Pro Power handles rather than the betas. But yeah, so moving it on, similar setup to the Valère, but instead of the bottom corners, I just have a big strip of 1 gram lead on the top. This is a very common wide body setup for me, as I usually do top corners, or I just do this. And a lot of people will ask at first, well, hey, why don't you have weight down here and here? It's a wide body, guys. It already has a high twist weight out of the box. In my opinion, you really don't need to add a ton more weight down here. Some people do, and they prefer that. Great. More power to you. I'm not telling you no. I'm just saying that for me personally, I find when it comes to my wide bodies, adding weight either here or in the top corners or somewhere along the top sides of the face is what works best for me personally. So, but moving it along, I really liked this paddle. It kind of made up for the sufficiencies that the Mach 2 Forza lacked, while keeping the things I liked about the Mach 2 Forza for the most part. Now, I will say, it is a lot easier to miss with a Pegasus than it is a Mach 2 Forza. But it's not to the point where it's a night and day difference. I think that what the Pegasus is more of a night and day difference with compared to the Gen 2 is the baseline for returns, for serves, and overheads. They give you the power and the plow that if you're playing on a windy day or you're playing someone that you feel you need to really drive the ball through, you can do that with that paddle. And in terms of shape differences, I'll hold them up here. It's going to be hard to see. They're actually a very similar shape. I just think that the Mach 2 Forza is a smidge wider. I don't know if you guys can see that or not. In the cheeks. And the 11624 is a smidge taller. Personally, I prefer the 11/6/24 shape over the Mach 2 Forza. I like kind of that 16 by 8 standardish shape into the wide body, or if you go into that 15.9 to 8.1. Those are my preferred shapes for this specific type of paddle. But yeah, the really only downside to Gen 3 is that it's Gen 3 and it's a construction that is shown to have broken down. But with the Alpha Pro Power specifically, it does have the 1 year warranty, and you do get a lot more kind of softness and plushness out of it, which makes me think that it's going to last a whole lot longer than the 4 to 6 months that most Gen 3 paddles have been lasting a lot of people as of right now in 2025. Moving it along, we have the newest paddle of the bunch. This is the Vatic Pro V-Sol Power Bloom 16 millimeter. And with the Bloom, also, I don't know why, but for some reason, these two just get a crap ton of ball dust. This is one session, might I add. I cleaned these before this session. This is one session. Meanwhile, the Mach 2 Forza gets a good amount, but not as much. Probably because it's a little more used than the other two, but yeah. So just for context there. Yeah, so moving it along, the Vatic is actually my favorite shape of the three, and I'll do a kind of a comparison here. They use the full allowable dimensions with the Bloom shape, to my knowledge, off of my ruler tape. I did 16 by 8 on the dot. And as you can see in the top corners, you just have a little more paddle there, just a little less width. And I really like that. This is the shape I prefer personally with the round. It's rounded on the top still, but it's a square rounded, not this like arrow curve rounded, if you see the difference there. And that's something that I prefer personally. This one is not as bad. This one's actually more identical to this one, I would say. But yeah, so with the Bloom, I think the biggest thing with the Bloom is that it's a lot more stiff. This specific one, the V-Sol Pro Power, and then the Alpha Pro Power. And I think that the stiffness in Gen 4 might turn people off if you're used to a more Gen 3 or Gen 2 paddle. But if you take the time and adjust, you're getting a lot more durability in Gen 4, and there is some performance there. I will say at times when flipping between the Gen 3 and Gen 4 doing this wide body comparison video, I really thought about performance a lot and the performative things. And ultimately, I think I still stand by that. I do think the Gen 3 is a little bit more higher performance than a Gen 4, but I think it's gotten really close. I think the gap is closing, and that unfortunately I don't have it in the shape, but the V-Sol Pro version of the Vatic, so the one with the blue instead of this reddish orange, it feels like a Gen 3, but it is Gen 4 as well. I think kind of could close that gap per se, if that's the type of feel you prefer. I actually have adjusted well to the Gen 4 feeling, and I don't mind it. I like it a good amount. I will just say, though, there are some shots where the Pegasus does feel a little lighter in the air, a little smoother, and they're about the same weight. They're about 8.4 to 8.5 ounces static weight. I think the Pegasus might be more towards 8.3 than 8.5, and the Bloom more towards 8.5 than 8.3. But they play very similar. They're both extremely gritty, have a ton of spin, a ton of grit, and perform well. Now, I will say with the Bloom, you are getting that Gen 4 foam, so you're getting more durability. I think is the big thing. And more, look, if you're at a tournament and your paddle breaks, core crushes, delaminates, whatever, that stinks. I have yet to really have that issue with Gen 4 so far, personally. And I can tell you right now, I've had that issue with Gen 2 a good amount and with Gen 3 a good amount. Mainly Gen 2, just because the thermoforming breaks a little faster for me than the Gen 3 foam ring construction stuff. But yeah, it's tricky. It's a tricky construction, and companies are doing a better job with it. But I think that's the big pro to Gen 4. I do think the Gen 3s do still hit a smidge harder than the Gen 4s, but I don't think that by any means you are losing per se, you know, a serious amount of performance between the two if you're an amateur player. Now, if you're a pro listening to this, go for the paddle that gives you the best performance just because this is your livelihood, all that. If you're absolutely money doesn't matter, anything, I would put you towards Gen 3. I think if we're talking price to performance, I mean, this is 99.99 after discount code, and this is I think it's like 185 or 180 after discount code, which is still good. It might be 190. I gotta double check on that. But, you know, look, for that price, I can get two Vatics almost for the price of one Pegasus. So if you're an amateur, I would go the Gen 4 route there, the Vatic, for the wide bodies. Or if you really want that control paddle that you feel like you're just gonna make a bunch of balls and be consistent, look, this thing's still a great paddle, the Mach 2 Forza. You could play with this today and be okay. It just depends on your game style and your playing preferences, I would say, you know. All right, guys. Thank you for watching my video. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already to the channel. Thank you and have a wonderful rest of your day.